I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Chris Hamlett. Chris is the National Outreach Officer for Discover Materials and coordinates the national approach towards raising awareness of the prevalence of material science and engineering in day-to-day life. He works with schools, families and community groups to demonstrate that materials science and engineering is a viable and exciting career path. After completing his PhD in chemistry at the University of Birmingham, Chris went on to a postdoc position at Nottingham Trent University. He worked as a lecturer in both chemistry and physics at Nottingham, as well as holding positions at the University of Wolverhampton and the University of Birmingham before joining Discover Materials in 2019. In his talk today, Chris will discuss his pathway through material science and expand on how his multidisciplinary research background helped build a career around inspiring the next generation of material scientists. So I know everyone's waiting, and I'll pass over to Chris, who is I'll just say he's on mute at the moment. So I'll ask you to unmute, Chris, and then please share your screen when you're ready.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, George. Can you hear me all right?
Hear you.
Fantastic. And can you see my slides? Have I shared them? Or
not yet, no.
Not yet. Brilliant. I shall share. There we go. Is that all ready?
That's good.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, thanks very much for the introduction and for inviting me to speak to you all today, and thank you all for coming. So yeah, as George says, I'm Dr. Chris Hamlett. I'm based at the University of Birmingham, but work for a working group called Discover Materials, which is a national working group to promote material science to schools, communities, and the next generation of scientists. My post is kindly supported by Royce, who also worked very closely with us on this project. So what I'm going to talk about today is a brief introduction to my pathway to outreach and to where I am now. The first part, or probably the first 2/3 of it, will be how I got into outreach and the activities that I've developed through funding from the Royal Society of Chemistry. And then the second part of it will be introducing Discover Materials, why we exist, and how you guys can get involved. So I started fresh out of school, went to Nottingham University to do a master's in chemistry. I chose this because it was my strongest subject at school, and I thought, I'll go and do a degree in it. Perhaps shouldn't have done it like that, because I promptly failed my first year. I failed about half of my modules, and it wasn't the best start to uni life, let's say. I enjoyed everything else about it, but it was just the exams and results didn't exactly go to plan. I was offered a bachelor's on the chemistry of materials course at Nottingham. And when they offered me this, I thought, materials, I don't really know what that is. I thought it was textiles and stuff, which actually is quite a common misconception when it comes to material science from those who haven't heard of it. But the first experiment we did was get a little bit of metal, put it in liquid nitrogen, smash it with a massive, great Sharpie impact tester, and look at it through an SEM. And I thought, what's not to love about this subject? This is brilliant. You get to freeze stuff, smash stuff, and look at it under expensive equipment. So I managed to actually get a degree from Nottingham, and then I went on to do a master's in nanoscale science and technology. My project was based at the University of Leeds, where we were looking at the microstructure of metallic swarf from machining operations. But half of the lectures from this course was at the University of Sheffield. So it's a fantastic opportunity to see two universities and learn about all the different parts of nanoscale science and technology. So we did biology, physics modules, chemistry, material science, even some computer modeling. So it was a fantastic course to be involved with. And then I got back into chemistry back at the University of Birmingham, where I worked on nanoscale chemistry of surfaces. So the first project I worked on my PhD was a collaboration with the guys in MechEng and the microfabrication. So they made these microscale paddle resonators. So it was a silicon nitride wafer, which they used focus ion beam to cut out. and then use focused iron beam to deposit a thin platinum wire around the periphery of it. So drawing on A-level physics, once you pass a current through this wire and put it at 90 degrees to a magnetic field, it starts resonating. So my project was to chemically modify this surface to absorb different nanoparticles and different absorbents. And to sort of, as a proof of principle, we published some work where we were looking at the pH-dependent absorption of gold nanoparticles. So I worked on a vapor deposition technique for these, and it's quite tricky to do and not to break these, as we found out. Another project that I worked on in my PhD was making micro-scale arrays. So this AFM image here shows 2 by 2 micron dots that are about 40 microns apart. These are little gold islands that I made by micro contact printing a pattern onto gold and then etching it away. So micro contact printing is effectively sort of potato printing that you would have done at primary school, where you get a pattern, put a file or file group on it, print it down, leaving the pattern, and then we etch away the unexposed stuff. So what we did with this pattern then was to remove the passivating layer and then put various surface chemistries on there to stick sperm cells to. So the idea was to use this as a chip that you could have individual sperm cells on that wouldn't interact with each other, and then you can look at them under a microscope with the idea that it would go in to help artificial insemination. And then the third project I worked on was making gold nanoparticles and incorporating them into electrospun nanofibers. So this was a TEM image. You can see the outline of the fibers, and we were looking at trying to get some nice gold wires in there. So these are the gold nanoparticles I made, but that we found that they clumped together, and that was sort of towards the end of my PhD, so I didn't get enough chance to properly to expand on that further. But you can sort of see from my PhD, I was doing some nanoscale chemistry, surface patterning, looking at and it was fantastic, and it's all material science and brings sort of the chemistry and a bit of physics and fabrication into it. So then after my PhD, I then went to Nottingham Trent University, where I spent 5 years as a postdoc in Glenn McHale's group. So we were looking at water repellent soils. So Glenn, he's a modeler, theoretical physicist. So we were working with the group of in the geology department at Swansea University. So this is a pile of naturally hydrophobic soil from Portugal, so it can become hydrophobic or water hating after wildfires or something like that. And water comes onto the surface, and you can see picks up loose droplets there. I had access to this high-speed camera throughout my postdoc, and it was great fun. So, but you can see that it tracks the hydrophobic soil to a water droplet, which does sound counterintuitive, but it's simply the surface tension of that water droplet that picks up these really small soil particles. But as you can see, we can get some nice videos. And my postdoc was to do with sort of modelling how the particle size of the soil and how it packed together, how that influenced the amount of the water actually ingressed into the soil bed. My second postdoc I did during the 5 years was to work on firefighting foams. So a bit more chemical formulation here, rather than trying to understand the surfaces. But the company I was working with helped make the AFFF, or the fluorinated foams, the aqueous film forming foams, that's what the AFFF stands for, to put out oil fires. So they produced the concentrate for this fire suppressant for the Buntsfield oil refinery fire. This was in Hempstead in, I think it was 2007. It was the largest fire ever in the UK, apparently, and it could be seen from space. And they were making this surfactant for this formulation for a week constantly to try and put this fire out. It was massive. But the problem with the aqueous film forming foams, it's a tongue twister, is the fact they've got fluorine in, and that is bad for the environment. It's a persistent chemical, but it's the bit of the formulation that makes it work on oil fires. Because if you just think of throwing water on a chip pan, it just goes boom everywhere and makes the situation 1,000 times worse. But if you use the aqueous film forming foams, the fluorine in there helps create a thin layer on the oil fire to knock out and deprive the fire of oxygen, allowing then the foam to provide a protective barrier. So my 2-year postdoc on that was to try and replace the fluorine. So then I went on to 5 years of lecturing in physics and chemistry at Nottingham Trent University before going on to doing some lecturing at Wolverhampton and Birmingham. And some of the research that I came up with there, which I sort of saw at the time as my direction in research, was to combine my newfound love of foams and the water repellent hydrophobic research I've done to try and kill the head of Guinness. So these glasses here, this one at the back is a normal glass, so it's hydrophilic or water loving, and I poured Guinness into that. You can see it's got the nice sort of normal head of Guinness on there. But then I hydrophobized, or made this glass hydrophobic, and then poured Guinness in there. And you can see that it destroys the head of the Guinness, this infamous stable head, but it also created big bubbles on the inside. Rather fortuitously, I did this while playing around in the lab just before a conference in Dublin, so it was quite timely. But I got inspiration from this by I was asked to proofread a book on the introduction to foams from a professor who was visiting at the time at Nottingham Trent. So that was good fun, and I sort of took inspiration from that to create these glasses. But then we took these, me and my supervisor at the time, we took these glasses to a local brewery in Nottingham, Castle Rock Brewery, and we found that this effect was very dependent on the actual kind of beer that was used. So it wasn't as, so it was a really interesting sort of field. But given I was on sort of short-term lectureships at the time, I hadn't got a post to apply for enough funding to look into this properly. So I will expand on that later about where that led me to get my funding from. Okay, that's a bit about my background. So now my journey into outreach and public engagement. So this picture here is from Malvern Festival of Innovation in 2018, which was some of the first sort of outreach sort of talks I gave. And I was there making elephant's toothpaste, which is a bit of a crowd pleaser and is great fun to do. But I got into outreach by basically getting involved and giving it a go. It's something that I didn't actually do during my PhD. It was when I was at Nottingham Trent, I got involved with their outreach and public engagement vehicle called Nature's Raincoats. They developed this for the Royal Society Summer Exhibition in 2009. It was a collaboration between Nottingham Trent and Oxford University, but now sort of University of Edinburgh and Northumbria have been involved as well. But it essentially introduces water repellent surfaces and found in nature and what research is going on that at the time. So I got involved with Nature's Raincoats, and we took it to the British Science Festival, Big Bang Local, which they ran at the time. So we basically were looking at water repellent sand, duck feathers, and some extraordinary microstructures found in nature and how physicists had learned from those. This also in 2012 gave me the opportunity to lead a group from Nature's Raincoats over to India to TechFest in Mumbai in 2012. So TechFest was at the time Asia's largest science festival, and we spent 3 days in the boiling January heat talking to thousands of people about water repellent surfaces, and it was such an incredible experience. I really recommend it to anyone to just get involved, have a go. So I really picked up my love of outreach from Nature's Raincoats, and I wanted to get a bit more involved with outreach. And someone in the lab at the time recommended that I got membership of the Royal Society of Chemistry, so I did, and got involved with their ChemNet network at the time. So this was in the early 2010s. The RSE, their outreach vehicle, ChemNet, was a network of ambassadors who went into schools and science fairs to talk about chemistry. So I got involved with that, and I went into some schools and took in their Mission Starlight activity. So Mission Starlight, it was the Royal Society of Chemistry global experiment. I think it was in 2014. That basically involves some UV color changing beads, a UV torch, and you put different materials in between the two to see which ones block out UV light. So you can see the UV torches here, and these great color changing beads. It's such a simple but really effective experiment. I also helped out at the Black Country Museum in the West Midlands with the RSE's Dig for Victory, where we were changing the taste of spinach, making sherbet. It was great fun. And also helped out on the BBC stand, their terrific scientific one at the Big Bang Fair, where did all sorts of stuff, making setting up CRESS experiments and smiley faces on there, looking at how stuff grew. It was just great fun, to be honest. So it's get involved with some different groups there and built up sort of my outreach experience. And then I got to the point where I wanted to have a go at developing a bit of my own outreach and helping out at events. And it was this point that got in where I was trying to get out, as I mentioned before, research funding, but couldn't. So I thought I might try and get some outreach funding just to get some going in. So I noticed that the RSE had an outreach fund. So I looked into that and thought I'd quite like to get some funding on my CV, and also wanted to have a go at delivering my own outreach. So as part of the talk, I'm going to talk about how I put together the bid and the team, and then what I did with the funding. So first of all, I identified the event. So for any outreach application or event or activity, you want to know which audience you're going for. So I live in Birmingham, and I live next to a lovely park called Cotteridge Park. And every year they have a festival called Cocoa Mad there. So it stands for Cotteridge Community Music, Arts and Dance Festival. So obviously there's music there, there's arts there, and there's dancing. But there was no science. So in 2017, I thought, well, I'm going to apply to the RSE and try and get some funding to put some science on here. So the second part was finding the right people. Because it was the first outreach grant I'd written, I wanted some support. So where better than a pub to find someone to help out with? So I went along to the Gunmakers Arms in Birmingham to hear Jamie Gallagher talk. So Jamie Gallagher, he's based up near Glasgow. He's a freelance science trainer and communicator. He's absolutely fantastic. So he was giving a workshop on using Kahoot, the quizzing app, to use in outreach. So I went along, listened to Jamie. But it wasn't Jamie I actually bumped into there to put on the to get involved with the RSE grant, even though I have worked with him subsequently. It was the lovely people at Brum SciComm. So Brum SciComm, it's a local group of science communicators in Birmingham. So it was started by Naomi Green, Sarah Cosgriff, and John Wood. And well, pre-COVID, we tend to meet up every month or two to discuss outreach and science in general. I mean, this was BrumPsychon, obviously based in Birmingham, but there are other such groups around the country. So Katie Steckles has put on her website, has put together a list of psychon groups such as BrumPsychon. So you might be able to find ones close to you there. This list is, I think it might be a couple of years old. I haven't been back to check out whether or not she's updated it, but it's a good starting point. Just to meet other science communicators in a nice, relaxed environment. So yeah, I got in touch with BrumPsychon and also Friends of Cotteridge Park, who run CocoMad. So I basically got in touch with those to help deliver the event, and actually the event organises itself, which is very important when it comes to targeting your outreach. You need to know your audience. So I discussed the activities to put on and how to pitch them to both BrumPsychon and Friends of Cotteridge Park. So then I applied for the funding. It was just shy of £2,000 I managed to get for CocoMad scientists in 2017. So I bought a badge maker to so visitors to our stand can make their own badges, have something to take away, and also we can make our own to help identify ourselves. I bought a mass balance, and we were to do experiments like weighing the amount of water absorbed by a nappy. So that kind of outreach activity, you're playing on using something that the audience are familiar with. So there's a lot of families go to Cotteridge Park, so a lot of nappies used. So it was quite an interesting one there. I drew on some of the experience and activities that I'd used with the RSC. So I've got some UV color changing beads so we could run Mission Starlight. And then it was fantastic once we saw our event being advertised in the programme for CocoMad. So in the middle here, new science at CocoMad. And that was just so exciting seeing that in print. It was wonderful. And also seeing it further in the programme here. So yeah, I was really pleased to get that the funding in and get it all prepared. And then we delivered it. So we had nice big gazebo there. We had some busking. So I bought some lotus leaves, which are naturally water repellent. So again, I drew on some of the outreach that I did through Nature's Raincoats. And we got members of the audience or people just wandering around the park to try and get this leaf wet. They couldn't. We also had some bubble blowing as well, so to blow great big bubbles to attract a crowd. Some of our volunteers, such as Sam here, were just mingling around blowing bubbles just to build the atmosphere. And to every event since, we have been blowing big bubbles. But also we got a bit of audience participation. So towards the end of the day, we made exploding stick bomb. Ready? So that was great. Good fun to sort of like end the day with, and also there's some science now we could talk about sort of storing energy, and so that was great fun. So yeah, we'd finished that the day of CocoMad, and we were all exhausted but delighted with how it went. And also having volunteers means that you can get help clearing up as well, which is great. So I wrote a piece for the RSC members magazine, The Voice. So I've got a QR code there if you want to read it more. But this kind of this kind of sort of reporting of outreach events is really important when it comes to getting people to hear about you. So got that piece written, and then fell down the slippery slope of felt I had to write another one. So I wrote a follow-up grant in 2018 where I got myself a thermal imaging camera, some lemon batteries, an experiment based around the red cabbage indicator. So it was basically I got sort of thermal imaging camera and got some activities based around the wonderful world of lemons. So we got lemon batteries and also the colour changing effects of lemon on the red cabbage indicator. So that was good fun. And obviously bubbles again. So yeah, the follow-up grant, I got basically some more outreach kit. And it was more team building with some fantastic volunteers. And if you want to read up about that, I've got the QR code there. And then after 2 years of this, I had a career change. So this is when, at the point of my career, I got offered my current role of National Outreach Officer for Material Science and Engineering. And the first bit I did was to help develop the Roy stand at Jodrell Bank at Blue Dot. So within 2 months of starting, it was at Jodrell Bank, and we had to develop 8 tables worth of activities. So yeah, I basically drew on my experience to help with 5 of them. So we did a water repellent station, UV colour changing beads, thermal imaging camera, but also we did some tensile testing. So we got a portable tensile tester, and the visitors helped break bits of plastic on there, and because it's got, you might notice a hand wheel up there. I'll come back to the tensile tester later. The audience could physically turn it and feel all that force needed to break the plastic. And there's also other groups from Manchester doing 3D printing of virus models as a hook to their antiviral research, and also making we had a 3D printer making some pretty cool structures like these cogs here. So that was my career change bit. But then going back to more RSE funding, despite the fact of just starting a new job, I still felt I still have to have a run of 3 years of applying for RSE funding. And it was the International Year of the Periodic Table. So I applied for some funding, but also brought the Discover Materials stuff along as well. So this is the Discover Materials chocolate impact tester. If you do get involved with Discover Materials, Royce, you may well get to use one of these. And also I got involved the guys from the Faraday Institute around Birmingham. So Lizzie Driscoll here developed helped develop the battery Jenga outreach for them to show the degradation of lithium-ion batteries on charging and discharging. And Pete Slater, who's a prof here at Birmingham, in the middle, his group helped with that too. So this was really good. It was actually Lizzie who encouraged me to apply for some funding for COCOMAD in 2019. And with that funding, I didn't buy a dinosaur, that came with the Faraday group. I bought a whole load of different elements to put them in jars to link to the periodic table. I bought some helium balloons with the chemical symbol on there. You can't really make them out, but these little tiles are all Scrabble letters with the entire periodic table on. And I also made up some periodic table cushions. So there's a bit of a chill out area in the materials and chemistry tent. So that was great fun as well. But then obviously in 2020, it all went the whole world went a bit strange. So the funding I applied for in 2020 was for a virtual version of COCOMAD. So given that everyone was, the schools were off and everyone was at home wondering what to do, I applied for funding for 200 boxes of kit for local school children in the Birmingham area. So given I was at home to do this, I had a massive pallet load of stuff delivered to my house, which I was public enemy number one at home for a bit, because it took over the garden. And then also when we put the kit together, this was the example of the box. So we had different ways of sorting out recycling. We linked with the Faraday Institute to put together battery recycling activities. We had the lotus leaves in there. We had put some magnets in for the kids to use. There's just basically a load of stuff in the box. And if I just reverse a second, we had instructions for each of the experiments as well. But they did take up half my house. So after taking over the garden, I then took over the front room to store all these boxes. So I've got to give a massive thanks and acknowledgement to my wonderful wife for putting up with me during this. So I managed to get rid of the boxes to it was 100 to a secondary school and 100 to a primary school. So this gave kids in the local area some science to really get their teeth into over lockdown, and we got some great feedback from there. So on Twitter, people were posting videos of their fizzy rockets they were making. We put little lab coats in there as well for the primary school boxes, because who doesn't want to dress up as a scientist and do some investigating. We had magnifying glasses as well, so they could look at the structure of different surfaces. We had balloon kebabs as well, so they could try and learn about polymers by pushing kebab sticks through a balloon. So we had lots of really good feedback on that. And for virtual COCOMAD itself, we had a load of our scientists giving short talks on there. We had a drop-in session for the box holders, and it was really good fun. But it was our first foray into sort of virtual events. But then in 2021 was a bit more hybrid. So I got funding for another box of more materials related activities. So this was our Cocoa Micro Box. So this was what ended up being the first of a trilogy of materials related booklets. And much to my delight, I had access to a room at work. So I used this to store everything and to put the boxes together. And these boxes consisted of clip-on microscope lenses to look at the microstructure of surfaces. We had some 9-volt batteries in there to do electrolysis at home. There was loads of different activities in there. And myself and John, who I've been working with for a few years now on outreach, he was one of the from SciComm founders. We delivered that to school, and we've got the booklet on the Discovery Materials website. So got the link here and the QR code. So currently I'm working on sort of de-eventing this booklet to make it not specific to an event, and then teachers can use it as a resource in class and for science clubs. We also had an in-person session. So we sent the boxes out initially through schools, but then we had a drop-in session in the park, because it was at that sort of time where people were just getting back to face-to-face. So we in Cotteridge Park, we had our Discovery Materials ambassadors discussing the activities with the box holders and putting on some free science in the park for people too. So we have these clip-on microscope lenses, which are just fantastic. They just clip on your mobile phone and turn it into a 60 times zoom lens. You can see these. This was the t-shirt. You can see the lovely weave in there. So it's great to look at surfaces. And we were looking at hydrophobic surfaces on there. And this is the 9-volt battery experiment, where simply get water with a bit of bicarb in there, 2 drawing pins, put them through a cup and put them on a battery, and you're splitting the water. So that's a really good little trick to have up your sleeve when you come to talk about, so say, hydrogen. So we'll go on to that in a bit. So this was the 5th year I managed to get RSC funding. And oh yeah, forgot to mention, to back up the box and the in-person event, we also had an online event where Mark, who's one of the Discover Materials co-chairs, he's based at Swansea University, did a live SEM session, and he even got a lotus leaf out, put some water on there, and then got very worried that he might end up dropping it on his SEM. So you can see the look of terror in his face there, as it was a lot more hydrophobic than he thought. But this was the SEM image he got of the lotus leaf, and you can see how fantastic this is. All the wonderful little micro and nanostructures of the leaf. And we've got the video of Mark's session on our YouTube channel, so you can see that if you like. So then we, as I mentioned, we did a trilogy of booklets. This was the second one. So this was year 6 of my RSC funding, the Cocoa Biomatter bag, where we looked at sustainability and of materials and bioplastics. So the kit, basically we had the booklet, as we had for the microbox, and then we had all the equipment that people would use to make sodium alginate based bioplastics. So they had a bottle of vinegar as well, and then mixed that with alginate to cross-link it, and they could use anything they like eggshells or coffee grounds to put in there to make biocomposite materials. And then at CocoMad, one of our ambassadors who's got a background in fashion and sustainability made up these coffee ground bioplastics. So CocoMad in this time was fully fledged back in person. So this is Zoe, who helped, who made this and helped create the booklet. She gave a talk about bioplastics, and then we had some slime making activities to get kids hands on and use as a bit of a hook for people to sign up for the bags, because unfortunately we had to post them out because all the equipment for the bags hadn't arrived in time for CocoMad. So this was a bit of a lesson we learned, but you can sort of see everyone had fun, and we then posted the boxes out post event. So for the feedback for this, we asked people to send us photos, and we got some photos of this young lady making bioplastics, having a fantastic time doing some wonderful science at home. And then my final, most current RSC funded project, well, mine and Discover Materials, is the Cocoa Electro bag. So this involves looking at the chemistry and material science involved in energy sort of storage and applications. So this is a bag we put together. We included some carrots to make carrot batteries. We looked at hydrogen, solar power as well. So we used a 9-volt battery for splitting up water and talking about hydrogen. We put in stuff like carrot batteries, penny batteries, and I quite like this. We had I love this, to be honest. We had a solar powered bug, which when you shine a UV torch on, starts whizzing around. So we use this as a hook to talk about and introduce people to solar energy. And this time, inspired by another project we worked on last year, we made videos to accompany each of the activities described in the bag. So Lizzie, who's one of our ambassadors at Oxford, she did the wonderful video to accompany the solar power video, and the solar power activity. So again, we've got this on our website. So on the Discover Materials website, you can go on, have a look for the Cocoa Electro bag, and got access to all of the videos there. So we disseminated the bags at CocoMad. So we had 40 bags for that. So here's Lizzie giving out bags and someone having a good route through. We gave them out at SciFest at the University of Wolverhampton. So that's another 40 bags. And we also gave them out at Blackstein 10 event at Birmingham. So Blackstein 10 was organised by the fantastic guys at Blast, who promote community learning in the Black Caribbean communities based in Birmingham, and they also are based around Bristol, London, and Manchester, I think, too. So, yeah, this is some of the activities we've got out there. And so far, we've got some feedback through. We've got photos of people making their batteries at home. Someone moving from the lemon batteries to then look at apple batteries and stuff. So that's fantastic to see this expansion of home learning. And also people making their penny batteries, which is wonderful. And what was fantastic was we ran an online survey, and 100% of respondents said that it increased the child's interest in science. This was awesome to hear. But this is based on 5 respondents. So this is one thing I have found about doing the bags and asking for sort of remote feedback, is that it is tricky to get. And getting face-to-face, in-person feedback is a lot better. So this feeds into some of the lessons I've learned from my 7 years of funding from the RSC. The first lesson was make sure everything is ordered in plenty of time. So for the cocoa biomatter bag, as I mentioned, not everything arrived in time for the event. This was due to supply issues and everything. But this was a lesson I learned and applied to the electro bag, which we ordered everything a lot earlier, and the bags were ready to go for event day. Try not to have too many activities running on the stand at once. This was a lesson I learned from the second of my projects from the RSC. This was the 2018 one, that I'd ordered a load of stuff to have more activities than we actually had space and time for, and actually people for on the stand. So it's be realistic in the activities you run. And also, as I've just said, collecting feedback is not trivial. So we do it in in-person events by giving out stickers and saving the backings of stickers. But online, we rely on people actually filling in remote surveys and sending us images, which was easier during lockdown because people had nothing better to do. But since people have gone back to doing stuff face-to-face, it's a lot trickier. And does anything make sure your volunteers are trained before the event? Okay, I've just realised that it's about 1:45, so I'll just quickly go through what Discover Materials is. So Discover Materials was set up in 2017 by the heads of the materials departments. So these graphs are showing the number of applicants to material science and engineering, chemistry, physics, and various other engineering disciplines. As you can see, material science is by far the lowest out of these 6 disciplines here. So order of magnitude less. But what was encouraging was that it was going up for a bit, and then it whizzed up and started going down. But this is due to the UCAS coding. So compared to some of the other activities, I'm not going to get into the intricacies of UCAS codes now, but material science often split into lots of different codes, which makes recording more difficult. But we've published this data in Materials World, which can be found here by this QR code, and I'm sure it'll be shared in the chat too. But a brief timeline of Discover Materials. As I mentioned, in 2017, it was set up as a working group by the heads of department, initially aimed at targeting sixth formers, so 16 to 18-year-olds, to get them to apply to material science courses. They set up the working group based at these 9 universities, and the working group was made of early careers academics and outreach officers who came up with the group Discover Materials and the brand Discover Materials. And it was aimed at promoting material science and engineering as a discipline rather than individual institutions. And then I was appointed as National Outreach Officer in 2019 through the support and funding of the Henry Royce Institute. So this is when I came from Nottingham-Trent and all my outreach experience there, and brought that to bear on trying to come up with a national approach. So, as I mentioned before, I co-organised the Royce stand at Jodrell Bank, but also at New Scientist Live in London in 2019. In 2020, just before lockdown, University of Leeds joined too. So I tried to reach out to the universities that were members of Royce but not Discover Materials. So at the time, that was Leeds and Liverpool. So Leeds joined in 2020. But then also just before lockdown, we had commissioned a video to showcase material science and engineering. It was developed by a professional company. We also commissioned a survey of the 2016 to 18-year-olds too. So we reported that in our articles in Materials World, which basically found that targeting 16 to 18-year-olds is a bit too late to get them to go to uni, get them a bit earlier. So we now aim at 11 to 14-year-olds generally to get them interested in knowing what material science is, but then signposting older year groups more towards sort of applying to university and the careers parts of material science. Also in 2020, we ran our first online event where we had Marty Jobson doing live microscopy online, and we also launched our video. It was meant to be launched at the Big Bang 2020, which was obviously cancelled. And we also set up our ambassador scheme during lockdown too. So our ambassador scheme is aimed at generally PhD and postdocs, but anyone interested in helping to promote material science and engineering can become an ambassador too. I can touch upon that in a bit. In 21, we had our first in-person events for ambassadors at the Malvern Science Festival, where we gave talks and ran activities. As I said, we published a series of articles in Materials World, which can be found via links on our website. So hopefully that should appear in the chat for you. We had our first in-person ambassador conference in Manchester. The attendance wasn't great, but it did coincide with train strikes and the death of the Queen. So we didn't get huge attendance there, but those who made it, it was a fantastic event to get this up and running. We had our first in-person Cheltenham Science Festival events and Big Bang. So the Big Bang attracts about 20,000 school children over 3 days in Birmingham, and we ran workshops at the Cheltenham Science Festival. And this year we had our another input. We had our first ambassador awards. So this was for ambassador activity in 2022, where Tom here, who's the training and skills manager at Royce, kindly presented the awards. We've set up website and social media working groups for our ambassadors to be part in as well. So if you did want to become an ambassador, you'd have access to, you get in touch with me basically, and you have access to the network of volunteers and your peer groups who can help inspire the next generation of material scientists. So these were, we had 6 universities represented at our conference. You get experience of delivering outreach. So here's a photo from Big Bang this year, where Sarah Jane from Swansea was doing some microscopy. So you get experience at delivering it, and also support from us. You get access to our outreach kit. So as I mentioned, it's our chocolate impact tester. It's really portable and you can take it into woods, as you can see there. Our tensile tester, which can fit into the small IKEA, or into an IKEA bag to lug around. Our thermal imaging camera, and also a busking box, which is a big wheelie case you can take into schools, fairs. Got loads of little fantastic hands-on activities for material scientists as well. So there's one of these at each of the Discover Materials universities. There's training opportunities. So such as Matt Pritchard here, he's a science magician and has trained some of our ambassadors to do cool eye-catching demonstrations. And Anna Pajajski here, who's an award-winning science communicator and does some fantastic storytelling outreach. She's got a background in material science too, so that's great. We can support and develop your outreach and public engagement activities. So if you've got an idea that you really want to get in front of school kids, get in touch. We can help that. Such as this workshop here on spin coating, developed by one of our ambassadors. And you also get an online presence as well. So every ambassador is encouraged to have a profile page that can be accessed by school children as a resource to see how to get into materials and what our ambassadors love about it. So take-home messages basically are, if you want to get involved with outreach, get in touch with either Alice at Royce. She deals with Royce Outreach. So generally that's public events run by Royce. So they're more sort of community kind of events. Or me, if you're more interested in discovering materials and wanting to get into schools, or just get in touch with one of us and between us, we can work out who should coordinate that. But the main thing is get involved with outreach, give it a go, bring your passion to the audience, be it the general public, at community events or in schools. Get involved with delivering and developing your own activities, especially if it's around your own outreach, because by communicating that to other audiences will help you understand your work better, and also will increase your communication skills, especially even when delivering to your own peers. And also apply for outreach funding. It looks fantastic on your CV and gives you experience of applying for outreach. So there have been outreach opportunities for funding through Discover Materials and Royce, or there's the Royal Society of Chemistry, but our Institute of Physics do that, and there are lots of other opportunities out there too. So I'd like to thank Nottingham Trent and Nature's Raincoats for helping me start up in outreach, the Friends of Cotteridge Park, the Royal Society of Chemistry, and Brum SciComm for helping me get on with my funding, Discover Materials and Royce for my current position, and also all these other people and companies and charities I've worked with too. And I can't go without thanking our ambassadors, who are absolutely fantastic. And they are so inspirational. And thank you guys for listening. If you want to get in touch, here's my email address, and here's all the Discover Materials social and website channels. Thank you very much.